So Phala Jyotish would still be non-scientific part of it, but the scientific part of Jyotish is astronomy and mathematics. Now, what we consider a good muhurta is कि देवता को invite करके majority houses fill हो रहे हैं. That is what we call a good muhurat is basically 48 minutes.
अच्छा
That is what muhurat, a time frame of 48 minutes.
मुहूर्त का
Right.
एक होता है। तो व्हाट इज़ द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ ऑल दिस थिंग कि और ऐसा क्यों हम लोग इस सब पे क्यों बिलीव करते हैं कि इफ उस टाइम पे अगर शादी नहीं हुई तो समथिंग समथिंग बैड विल हैपन और लाइक ऐसा क्यों बोला जाता है?
Panchanga, there are 5 elements as the name says,
As the name says,
Panchanga.
yeah.
Yeah. So उसमें से 3 astronomical है और 2 astrological है.
अच्छा।
The word Amavasya itself means Amavasya, which means to live together.
पता ना कि जब पहले गुरुकुल में बच्चों को भेजते थे तो वहाँ पे वो 14 विद्या सिखाते थे।
हमारे कैलेंडर के जो नेम्स हैं मंथ्स के, चैत्र वैशाख ज्येष्ठ. So where do these names come from?
हमारे भी हेलो भार्गव, वेलकम बैक टू आवर पॉडकास्ट रेडियो शो विद रिंकी। कैसे हो?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
So last time we did a podcast on Indian philosophy है ना, तो उसमें after that actually get to know more about Vedant philosophy. उसके बाद ही मुझे और पता चला कि वेदांत के अंदर और भी कितने schools हैं and उसके बाद ही actually I got to know कि जो स्कॉन का भी है, जो श्रीला प्रभुपाद ने establish किया था, वो भी वेदांत का ही है, चिंत्य भेदा भेद
Yeah.
वो उसके से ही निकला है।
Correct. Yeah. So basically, ISKCON belongs to the sect of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So yeah, that they follow the principle of Achintya Bheda Ved, as you said. It's a part of Vedanta. It's Vaishnavism, but it's more specifically Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So yeah, it's a part of that.
Yeah, which is very interesting. After that, I only get to know about this Vedant का भी. तो आज भार्गव हम लोग एस्ट्रोनॉमी पे बात करने वाले हैं बट वी ऑफन गेट कंफ्यूज। मेरा पहला क्वेश्चन यही रहेगा आपसे कि ये ना लाइक मोस्ट ऑफ पीपल स्पेशली मी आल्सो ना, मुझे भी ना समझ नहीं आता कि व्हाट इज द एग्जैक्टली डिफरेंस बिटवीन एस्ट्रोनॉमी, एस्ट्रोलॉजी और जो हिंदी का वर्ड ज्योतिष है, तो व्हाट इज द रिलेशन और इफ यू कैन लाइक ब्रेक इट डाउन और एक्सप्लेन।
Definitely. Yeah. So basically, astronomy is a science, whereas astrology is not a science. So many times astrology is also pseudoscientific. So abhi, how does it relate to our Indian tradition? So Indian tradition mein we have the concept of Jyotish, as you said. So Jyotish during the Vedic literature, it was a part of the 6 angas of Ved. There are 6 anga, Shadanga. One of them is Jyotish. So Jyotish constitutes all 3, which is astrology, astronomy, and mathematics.
Okay.
So in तीनों चीजों को मिला के ज्योतिष बनता है. So there are some aspects in Jyotish which are also further Jyotish, which we can call predictive astrology. So that is where people would predict your behavior based on your planetary configurations during your time of birth. तो वो थोड़ा further ज्योतिष की तरफ भी थोड़ा सा जाता है, but majority of it is focused on astronomy, which is science. Nomi stands for measurement. Astro stands for stars. So it is focused on astronomy and mathematics, which is Ganit. So those are the 3 sects in Jyotish. And the earliest record of Jyotish in the Indian tradition dates all the way back to Vedic literature, or that comes from Vedanga Jyotish. So Vedanga Jyotish is one of the texts of astronomy / astrology / mathematics.
Okay. तो मतलब so just let me reframe it. तो जो ज्योतिष है वो इज अ हिंदी वर्ड है ना, और जो एस्ट्रोलॉजी है वो इंग्लिश का वर्ड है, राइट?
Yeah. So basically, Jyotish is a Sanskrit word. So Jyotish constitutes Phala Jyotish, which we can call astrology in the modern times. It constitutes observational astronomy, which we can call Jyotirvidya if you want. And also mathematics. So mathematics is Ganit.
So it's purely based on science. I mean, it's not जो हम लोग बोलते हैं कि हॉरोस्कोप और ये जो है सुपरस्टिशियस बिलीफ नहीं है ये एक्चुअली।
No, so the Phala Jyotish part of it, that is indeed not based on science, but observational astronomy. जैसे कि मुहूर्त क्या होता है, नक्षत्र क्या होते हैं, तिथि क्या होती है, that is all astronomy. Panchanga is astronomical and it is based on Ganit. मतलब उसमें calculations भी है, trigonometry है. But the moment you apply that set of observations to predict the behavior of people, in that case, it does not hold. So Phala Jyotish would still be non-scientific part of it. But the scientific part of Jyotish is astronomy and mathematics, and which is also there everywhere in our classical Siddhantas as well.
Okay. तो मतलब इसका इम्पोर्टेंस क्या था हमारे एंशियंट टाइम्स में ना ज्योतिष का, लाइक इफ यू कैन एक्सप्लेन कि क्या था ज्योतिष का इम्पोर्टेंस?
Definitely, very good question. So if you go back to the Vedic times, which is around 1200 BCE to 1400 to 1200 BCE के आसपास Vedic literature evolve हुआ है. What I mean by Vedic is the four Vedas, Samhitas, Aranyaka, Brahmana और उनके 6 अंग. So basically वहाँ जब वैदिक ब्राह्मणों को कोई रिचुअल परफॉर्म करना होता है, सो रिचुअल के लिए उन्हें लगती है सामग्री, और रिचुअल के लिए उन्हें लगता है टाइम, लाइक टाइम ऑफ द डे, व्हेन शुड बी परफॉर्म द रिचुअल. Yeah, so जो सामग्री में when they have to set a particular compound for the fire, so that is called Agni Chayam. So Agni Chayam is basically the block which we can call mandal, Agni mandal कह सकते हैं. तो वो कैसे कंस्ट्रक्ट करना है द फायर altar, उसके लिए मैथमेटिक्स यूज किया जाता था. And we see in the Shulva Sutras, they actually talk about the Pythagorean theorem. So how to construct a square, a perfect square, how to construct a triangle from that, and there are different methods that are prescribed there to construct the fire altars. So it was a very methodical way, और उधर mathematics लगता था. Now इसमें proof नहीं दिया. For example, if you go to the Greek history, Pythagoras provided a proof for his theorem. That concept is not present in the Indian tradition. Proofs were not given, directly results were given. But the whole point कि अगर मुझे रिजल्ट पता है, इसका मतलब मुझे पहले की मेथोडोलॉजी पता है, just that मैंने वो लिखी नहीं है. So we predominantly see that in the ancient literature. तो उन्हें मैथमेटिक्स लगता था सामग्री सेट करने के लिए, फायर अल्टर सेट करने के लिए they used trigonometry and abstract geometry. And to set the time of the ritual, they had astronomy. So basically, at what time of the day should the ritual begin? How long should the ritual last? So they had different instruments as well. जैसे कि घटिका पात्र का नाम का इंस्ट्रूमेंट होता है, जो आज भी आप यू सी दैट इन वेडिंग सेरेमनीज. एक बहुत बड़ा पात्र होता है, उसके अंदर पानी भरा होता है, और उसके बीच में देयर इज अनदर स्मॉल वेसल व्हिच हैज अ होल एट द बॉटम, एंड द वेसल डिसेंड्स ऑल द वे बिलो. So the time it takes for the vessel to descend, that is called one ghatika. And when you do that twice, it is called one muhurta. Okay. Yeah, so that is what muhurta means. It is a time measuring thing.
So if we can explain muhurat क्या होता है, मतलब हम लोग
Yeah, definitely. So muhurat is basically 48 minutes. अच्छा. That is what muhurta, a time frame of 48 minutes. And then it's a chronology. So basically it starts with Ghatika, which is what we measure by that falling instrument. So after Ghatika we have Muhurta, and slowly and steadily it moves towards Prahar. So you might have heard of the phrase कि आठवां प्रहर चल रहा है, छठावां प्रहर चल रहा है. Yeah, so it goes to Prahar. After Prahar, it goes to Tithi. So Tithi is the next largest unit of time. After Tithi, it goes to Nakshatra, Ahoratra, and then Masa, and then Varsha. So these are units of time. And we will definitely talk more about it. Yeah, but this is the idea.
So many things.
Yeah.
तो मतलब जैसा आपने बताया ना कि जो वो स्क्वायर्स एंड ऑल वो बनाते हैं ना, जो यज्ञ भी करते हैं तो वो बनाते हैं, तो उसका भी साइंटिफिक रीजन था, मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि वो ऐसे ही बना दिया जाता था.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say scientific reason tha. I would say they applied abstract geometry to construct that ritual, the fire altar. What the ritual they performed, that cannot be scientific because that's based on their beliefs. जैसे कि अग्नि को, सोम को, या फिर इंद्रदेव को उनके लिए आहुति देना. So that was all a part of their worship. But सामग्री जमा करने के लिए और कंस्ट्रक्ट करने के लिए वो जो नॉलेज अप्लाई करते थे, that is indeed geometry. So abstract geometry was applied in the rituals. Astronomy was applied to do the correct rituals at the correct time. So they used all the sciences to perform rituals. So the application of abstract geometry in astronomy was in the rituals. Today we use it for other applications. So उनको बहुत डेप्थ में नॉलेज नहीं था एस्ट्रोनॉमी के बारे में, because वेदांग ज्योतिष talks about sun, moon and the earth और उनके computations. कि revolutions of the moon, revolutions of the sun, what time of the day should we begin the ritual. So it's based on observations, but it's not that deep क्योंकि बहुत पहले लिखा गया है. And even the geometric principles, they are pretty basic principles. Like Pythagoras theorem हो जाएगा, या फिर anything that is related to constructing the fire altar. So that is what the knowledge will be limited to. वेदांग ज्योतिषम. But अब बाद में हम जब सिद्धांत की किरा तक आए, then we have Aryabhata, Varamira, Brahmagupta, all the later Indian astronomers, which have done astounding work in astronomy itself and mathematics. So उसके बारे में हम थोड़ा बाद में बात करेंगे. But this is basically the idea.
और ये भी तो होता था ना कि जब पहले गुरुकुल में बच्चों को भेजते थे तो वहाँ पे वो 14 विद्या सिखाते थे. तो उसमें चार वेदास, फिर 4 उपवेद और 6 वेदांग. तो उसमें ही ज्योतिष आता था. तो फिर उसमें वेदांग और उसमें ज्योतिष को क्यों ऐड किया? लाइक इफ यू कैन एक्सप्लेन कि वेदांग क्या होते हैं?
Oh, so Vedanga are 6. We have Nirukta, which is etymology. Then so we have Nirukta. Then we have Chanda, which is Chandas are basically metric units. So that is the second anga. Then we have Kalpa, which is about rituals. Then we have Shiksha, which is phonetics. Then we have Vyakarana, which is grammar. And then we have Jyotisha, which is astronomy. So 3 of these are based on the language itself, and the remaining 3 are based on the rituals. So these are the 6 angas. So they are more like appendices to study the Vedic literature or to apply to the Vedic literature. कि जब तुम उस स्टूडेंट को सिखाओगे एटिमोलॉजी निरुक्ता सिखाओगे और शिक्षा फोनेटिक्स सिखाओगे, तो ही वुड बी एबल टू डू एक्सेजेसिस, मतलब मीमांसा कर पाएंगे वो वैदिक स्टेटमेंट्स की. So Mimamsa say you can interpret the Vedic statements. But how to interpret that? You know where the word comes from, what the word means, and how the word is constructed. That goes into phonetics. Vyakarana आ जाएगा तो syntactic बन जाएगी सब. And how to recite it. So that's where the chandas come into the picture. And while reciting it, how to perform the ritual. उसके लिए क्या क्या लगता है. So that is where Jyotish comes into picture. And what are the procedure? What is the procedure that you need to follow while you do the ritual? So that would come under kalpas. So all these were methods and practices that Brahmins had to follow to practice their religion.
तो पहले तो मतलब है ना, लाइक हमें तो एक्सेस ही नहीं था कि जो भी स्टार्स वगैरह होते थे. तो अभी तो फिर भी वी डू हैव टेलीस्कोप और हम लोग देख सकते हैं, वी हैव स्पेसशिप और जा सकते हैं, मतलब जाके फिर भी स्टडी कर सकते हैं. तो तब उन्होंने कैसे किया होगा, मतलब वो एक होता है.
Yeah. So basically the thing is, all astronomy that we find in the ancient cultures, not just in India, Egypt कह लो, Sumerian कह लो, Mesopotamian कह लो, so they are observational astronomy but limited to the naked eye. जो मुझे आँख से दिखाई देता है, उस पर astronomy. So that's why none of the ancient religions, including ancient Indian religion, talk about Uranus or Neptune. They have no mention of these 2 planets. So in our Navagrahas, Uranus and Neptune इसमें नहीं आते, because Uranus and Neptune cannot be seen with the naked eye. They require a telescope. So they were discovered only after the invention of the telescope. So Uranus and Neptune wouldn't be there in naked eye astronomy. But हमारे पूर्वज, so हमारे पूर्वजों ने जो भी कुछ astronomy किया है, it's naked. So for example, you can see Jupiter, you can see Saturn, you can see Mars, Mercury, Venus with your naked eye. So you can understand the motion. मतलब कितने साल के बाद Saturn फिर उस राशि में आता है. So this is an observation that I make, and from that I can conclude the revolution period of Saturn, which is 30 years. Jupiter 12 साल के बाद फिर से उस राशि में आता है. So the revolution period of Jupiter is 12 years. Mars is 2 years. Venus is 89 days. Venus is 271 days, I guess. And then Mercury is 87 days. So this is very much possible with naked eye. So there is no need for telescopes or anything of that sort.
Yeah, it makes sense. तो मैंने उनका सुना था भास्कराचार्य, जिन्होंने अपनी बेटी की लीलावती की शादी करवाने का जब सोचा था, तो उन्होंने भी वही प्लान किया था. वो वैसे तो मैथमेटिशियन थे, बट अपनी बेटी की शादी करानी थी, तो फिर उन्होंने कहा कि लेट्स जस्ट स्टडी. उन्होंने फिर एस्ट्रोनॉमी पढ़ा, फिर उन्होंने सेटअप किया था, और फिर वही जो आपने बताया ना कि एक वेसल में फिर उन्होंने एक वो डाला था, फिर उसका वो जब तक पानी में डिप नहीं आता तब तक वो मुहूर्त होते हैं, मुहूर्त का एक होता है. तो व्हाट इज द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ ऑल दिस थिंग की, और ऐसा क्यों हम लोग इस सब पे क्यों बिलीव करते हैं कि उस टाइम पे अगर शादी नहीं हुई तो समथिंग समथिंग बैड विल हैपन, और लाइक ऐसा क्यों बोला जाता है?
So basically, let's see the concept of muhurta.
हाँ.
So in any ritual, you will see that there are 7 houses. They are houses made of rice. ऐसे rice के there are small heaps of rice that are kept at some distance. On and on top of every heap of rice there is a small. It is called supari in Maharashtra. Yeah. So every heap of rice is a supari kept on top of it. So those 7 are called gruha. And it is also also considered to be one of the words from which graha comes from. Yeah. So those 7 houses that are there in the ritual, they are very important. So for example, in the first house, what the Vedic Brahmins basically do while performing the ritual is, in the first house, they invite um, the basically the nakshatra in which the moon is right now. So that comes in the first house. In the second house, they invite the Horadipati, which means the Lord of the day. So for example, for example, if today's day is Shukravar, then they would invite Shukra. If today's day is Shanivar, they would invite Shani in the second house. Yeah. And then, sorry, that is Dinadipati, Lord of the day. Dinadipati. So second house is Dinadipati. Third house is Horadipati, which means the Lord of the hour. So हमारे 24 घंटे होते हैं, so हर घंटे के लिए there is one Lord assigned. And we will talk about how these lords are assigned later. So third house is filled from Horadipati. So we have Nakshatra, Dinadipati, Horadipati. And in the fourth house, they invite the deity which resides over the Rashi of that nakshatra. So हर एक राशि में 3 नक्षत्र होते हैं, 2.5 नक्षत्र होते हैं. So आज मून जिस नक्षत्र में है और वो नक्षत्र जिस राशि में है, उसके राशि स्वामी को इनवाइट करना पड़ेगा.
We'll talk about
So that
nakshatra
goes.
too. We'll talk about
Yeah,
we'll
definitely.
talk about nakshatra.
Yeah, definitely. We will talk about the Panchanga. So yeah. So that goes into the fourth house. And in the fifth house, what they invite is all the basically planets which are on the eastern horizon that can be seen. And in the sixth house, the planets on the western horizon that can be seen. And in the seventh house, all the planets that are neither in the eastern horizon nor on the western horizon, but right now below not in our vision, below the horizon. So that comes into the seventh house. So ऐसे करके 7 houses are filled up. Now, what we consider a good muhurta is, let's say today is Shanivar. So second house में शनि आ जाएगा. Let's say we are performing this ritual in the first hour of the day. So शनिवार का पहला घंटे का जो स्वामी है, that is also Shani. So in the second house also Shani will be invited. Let's say in the third house, your moon is in the nakshatra Sagittarius. और Sagittarius का राशि स्वामी, for example, Saturn ही है. So the fourth house will also be filled with Shani. And let's say Shani is also right now visible on the eastern horizon. So in the fifth house will also be Shani. So if by inviting one particular deity, majority of the houses are being filled, एक ही देवता को invite करके majority houses fill हो रहे हैं, that is what we call a good muhurta.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the more deities you have, the more invitations you have to do. So पर अगर एक ही deity को invite करके maximum houses fill हो गए, then it's a very good muhurta. And that's why the Vedic priests are very much particular कि नहीं मुहूर्त मिस हो जाएगा, because it is possible that Shani is at the western horizon. So after 48 minutes, Shani will go below the horizon. So right now, when it was staying in the fifth house, अगर वो below horizon चला गया मुहूर्त elapse होने के बाद, तो उसमें अलग देवता को invite करना पड़ेगा. And instead of 4 houses, only 3 houses will be filled by Shani. So the good muhurta was lost. So it's important that you perform the ritual during that muhurta.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. और मतलब मुहूर्त से और जो देवता को इनविटेशन का मतलब ये है कि बिकॉज वी नो कि ये ना जो भी ये प्लैनेट्स हैं और ये जो है मून्स और भी जो भी प्लैनेट्स वगैरह हो गए, तो इनका इफेक्ट हमारी बॉडी पे होता ही है. तो फॉर एग्जांपल जब मतलब मैंने ऐसा पढ़ा है, आई एम नॉट श्योर इफ आई एम राइट और रॉन्ग, कि जब बेबी वूम में होता है माँ के, तो अगर मार्स उस टाइम पे दूर है तो उसपे उनमें ना विटामिन डी की कमी हो जाती है, मतलब बेबी में जब वो बॉर्न हो रहा है, क्योंकि उसको अब जैसे विटामिन डी का भी हो गया ना, फॉर एग्जांपल आप सन के एक्सपोजर में नहीं रहे तो यू विल बी लैकिंग इन विटामिन डी। तो वैसे ही आई गेस इसीलिए बोलते थे कि प्लैनेट्स का इफेक्ट पड़ता है आपकी बॉडी में, इसीलिए बोलते
Yeah,
हैं।
so basically, if you go back in that time, there was no distinction between science, pseudoscience, and stuff. So it was based on observation and correlation that I apply. But we should not confuse correlation with causation. So, for example, उनका सैंपल ये होगा कि 10 बच्चे आज 10 बच्चों ने जन्म लिया है. So आज अगर जन्म लिया है इसी टाइम पे throughout let's say that district, then in that case उन सबकी कुंडली similar होगी because within that time frame hardly any differences arise. So अभी इन 10 बच्चों में if we start analyzing their behaviors, so let's say इन 10 बच्चों में से 8 जो बच्चे they are short tempered. So उनकी प्रकृति के हिसाब से they are very short tempered. So now the person who's observing these 10 kids and he knows that yes 10 के 10 बच्चे एक ही टाइम पे जन्म लिया था, and out of them 9 children are short tempered. So उसमें से ये inference निकालेगा, वो इसमें से अनुमान निकालेगा कि okay there must be something related to their configuration, planetary configuration during the time of birth. But this is not a good set कि 10 में से 9 होगा, it doesn't mean you have something of a proof or something. Let's say you apply that sample to 100. अभी इस 100 में से अगर 50% से ज्यादा बच्चे if they have exhibit the same behavior, considering that all 100 of them were born on the same day, तब जाके okay I have some considerable sample set with a 50+% probability ये सच हो सकता है. But then okay 100 is still a small sample, let's expand my sample. So expand करते Vedic astrology में, I'm not talking about astronomy, they analyzed the sample of 1 lakh. So 1 lakh पत्रिकाओं का sample analyze किया और उनके behaviors को exhibit जो करते हैं वो उनको predict किया, and then they predicted the future. So this whole idea is based on correlating things, not causation. So it is not necessary that correlation implies causation. Statistical data makes sense only when you can establish causation. अभी अगर 1 लाख में जो inferences तुमने apply की, you cannot apply that to 7 billion people. You cannot apply that to 1.2 billion people. So in that case, either you need to update your data set, जो कभी नहीं हुआ, because people stopped doing astrology. If they had updated the data set, and if even in that case, the probability was greater than 50%, then we had some reason to believe astrology. But वो तो हुआ ही नहीं. On top of it, astrologers themselves have varying propositions, contradictory propositions at times. So in that case, astrology simply cannot be held to the status of a science. So we have no reason, rational agent has no reason to believe in the propositions of astrology. So because it's simply doing correlation and confusing it with causation. और यही बात सिर्फ हम नहीं, आर्यभट्ट, वराहमिहिर, ब्रह्मगुप्त खुद they were critical of astrology. वो खुद फलो ज्योतिष को साइड पे रखते थे because they were astronomers and mathematicians. और ब्रह्मगुप्त has himself debunked the myth of eclipses. कि लोग जब कहते थे कि eclipses are bad and ill omens. So ब्रह्मगुप्त खुद अपने खंड खाद्यक में debunk करते हैं इस myth को. So astronomers from ancient India, they were also opposed to फलो ज्योतिष because उनको पता था कि that's basically confusing correlation with causation. So we shouldn't do that. Instead, we should focus on observational astronomy. So yeah.
That makes sense. और ऐसे ही है ना, मतलब जैसे ऐसा बोला जाता है कि गणेश चतुर्थी के टाइम पे आपको नेकेड आईज से मून को नहीं देखना चाहिए बिकॉज और रीजन इसका ये होता था कि उस टाइम पे वो ऐसी लाइट एमिट कर रहा होता था जो आपकी आईज के लिए अच्छा नहीं होता था. So it may.
Yeah, so these are all folk beliefs basically.
Folk
For
beliefs?
example,
Okay.
yeah, for starters, moon doesn't have its own light. It simply reflects the light from the sun.
Yeah.
So there is nothing different during the time of that event. या फिर even eclipse के time पे there is actually nothing different during the eclipse.
Oh, अच्छा.
Yeah, lunar eclipse is simply the earth coming in between the sun and the moon. So that is what causes the eclipse. Same is the case with solar eclipses. Solar eclipse may the moon comes in between the earth and the sun, and there are two types of eclipses. We have annular, in which case the ring of the sun can still be seen, and the second is the total solar eclipse, in which case the moon's area completely covers the sun. But there is nothing different about कि eclipse में देखना नहीं चाहिए. Yeah, you should not directly look at the sun क्योंकि आंखें डैमेज हो जाएंगी. Yeah, but there is nothing different from in that light that comes from the sun.
Okay.
Yeah, just say you can be affected. It's just like any other light of during the day.
Okay. But I have
So
read
ये
that.
जो
But in the
yeah.
Rigveda it's been said ना कि आप सोमरस जो होता है वो मून की लाइट में जो प्लांट्स ग्रो करते हैं वो उसमें कुछ अलग ही चीजें होती हैं दैट हेल्प्स लाइक तब के टाइम पे ऋषियों को या उनको थोड़ी सी
Yeah, yeah.
एनर्जी लाइक रेड बुल बोलते थे एनर्जी ड्रिंक बोलते थे उनको सोमरस.
Right, right. So basically, soma today has been identified with two mushrooms. One is ephedra. Some people think that soma was ephedra. So it's not a hallucinogen; it's a stimulant. लोगों को पहले लगता था कि ये जो सब vivid imagery है ऋग्वेद में that they have composed after consuming soma. So maybe the ancient rishis were hallucinating stuff, and that is where it came from. But now modern scholars reject that idea. वो कहते हैं कि the compositions of Rigved they are highly syntactic and they are very methodical. So the Vedic rishis were not hallucinating. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were composing. So it's not a hallucinogen. It's a stimulant. It stimulates your response. So susti chali jati hai, वगैरह वगैरह. Basically anything that a stimulant does. And so it could be an agaric mushroom. It could be ephedra. अभी तक सोम का मतलब सोम क्या था? ये अभी तक खोजा नहीं गया है. But people have different claims about it. So yeah, that's basically the idea. But other than that, any beliefs that we can talk about follow Jyotish. They wouldn't be scientific. They are just beliefs, and people are free to follow it. But you cannot call it science.
Yeah. जब यहाँ पे सोलर एक्लिप्स हुआ था लास्ट ईयर आई गेस या अप्रैल में तो मैं देख रही थी मतलब वी हैव लाइक मेरे पे थे क्लासेस बट आई वाज लुकिंग एट इट एंड मुझे ना ऐसा थोड़ा सा मे बी बिकॉज ऑफ लाइट की बोलते हैं ना उस टाइम पे आपको थोड़े से वो वैसे फीलिंग्स आने लगेंगी जैसे कि भूत घूम रहे हैं टाइप सा तो आई वाज स्कैर्ड एक्चुअली मैं क्या अब नहीं देखा जाएगा मुझसे. So it doesn't happen like this. I mean, it's all pseudoscience.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, for example, the reason why it creates that ambience, कि भाई कुछ तो ऐसा gloomy है eclipse के time पे, that's because even animals are frightened because they have no idea कि दिन के बीच में अंधेरा कैसे होगा. Because they are used to the circadian rhythm. So basically, animals fall asleep when the sun goes down. Because it's inbuilt in their instinct. कि अगर sun चला गया, it triggers their circadian rhythm. So अगर बीच में ही sun चला गया, ढक गया, so they have and they understand that this is not the clouds because इतना अंधेरा clouds से नहीं होता. This is particularly during the time of total solar eclipse. So you'll notice that even birds stop chirping suddenly, animals don't move. So it's not because there is something coming from the eclipse. It's just that they are confused because in their circadian rhythm, ये fit नहीं हो रहा. So yeah, that's all.
Oh, that's why it's been said also कि आप बाहर मत जाओ because your circadian rhythm will get disturbed. है ना क्योंकि आपको
yeah. I mean, so since now we are intelligent creatures, we know that it's an eclipse. So in that case, our mind somehow adjusts to it. The same happens to astronauts. So if you go to an international space station, astronauts experience, I guess,
16 times sunrise.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So 6 changes throughout the day. 3 sunrise, 3 sunsets. So in that case, their circadian rhythm is totally messed up because so they have to train their body to adapt to it. So yeah, as intelligent beings, we are not supposed to believe in such myths which have been मतलब वो past के हैं, but अभी we know better than that. So yeah.
So how मतलब do you believe in जो भी आपने बताया कि वो 7 rice के pyramid type से बनाते थे फिर उसमें सुपारी रखते थे मुहूर्त के लिए.
Oh yes. So
what is your belief?
So it's a part of rituals. Okay. So just like any other religion has rituals, this was a ritual that was performed by Vedic priests. Abhi, what goes behind the rituals, the idea behind the rituals, that is philosophy. But how you actually perform the ritual, it's a part of religious practices. So I don't believe in the religious practices, but I appreciate the philosophy, the underlying philosophy. कि अगर आप ऋग्वेद की फिलोसॉफी देखोगे, so what is अग्नि, for example, इसमें अग्नि कुंड में जो अग्नि होता है, उसका मतलब क्या है? So the interpretation for Agni is given as appetitive nature of consciousness in Rigveda. But Agni के और भी types थे, जैसे कि we have Vaishwanara Agni, the Agni that watches over all. So इसलिए कभी-कभी सूर्य को भी अग्नि कहा जाता है because he watches over all. So there is an underlying philosophical tradition behind Vedic literature. So rituals were a part of it. Rituals were practices that they did. But the philosophy that underlies it, that's basically good. But I don't believe personally in the rituals. So मैं tradition के लिए करूँगा सिर्फ. So I believe that's tradition because it has been passed down. So I should maintain that tradition. But other than that, I don't have any doxastic attitude towards it. I would be agnostic. ठीक है? करना है तो करो. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I believe in rituals because उनका ना कुछ इफेक्ट्स तो होता ही है. I do believe in it कि वो हमारी बॉडी में इफेक्ट करते हैं. स्पेशली जो हवन होता है उसमें आप जो भी सामग्री डाल रहे होते हो तो जो उसकी फ्लेम्स निकल रही होती है और जो भी फ्यूम्स निकल रहे होते हैं उसके वो it does have an effect in our body, right?
So so basically if you consider havan specifically, so किसी भी combustion में, so since I'm doing research in combustion, किसी भी combustion में you are fuel and oxidizer. And any time you get a flame or any time you get a combustion of things, it's bound to emit basically harmful emissions as well. So nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, gases भी आ सकते हैं, carbon dioxide तो आता ही है. So it's bound to emit harmful gases as well, which you directly inhale. But then, अगर आप ritual कर रहे हो, या even if you don't do the ritual, if you follow the practices that lean towards spirituality, I would still support that idea. Like I would not resist radically against that idea. Because there is something called phenomenology of religion or phenomenology of religious experience. So basically, if I have experienced something, but if I cannot articulate into words, जो मैंने experience किया है, so what I do is I use the vocabulary that's already available in the religions. So for example, अगर मुझे कोई एक ऐसा experience आया है that I experience everything is interconnected and everything is just one substance, but I cannot articulate it. So what I do is, okay, I can use the vocabulary that's available in Advaita because it says one Advaita. So I use the same vocabulary, but maybe the experience that I have may not be the same thing that I'm articulating. So the difference between the experience and language or words, expression, that could be very vast. So to give you a simpler example, we know that sugar is sweet, but how can you explain that to a person who has never had sugar? You cannot explain sweetness. The person has to experience it.
It's very subjective.
So yeah, how come? Exactly. So it's a very subjective thing, and it comes under phenomenology. And many philosophers support phenomenology of religious experience as well. So I would not radically resist.
थोड़ा सा phenomenology को भी explain कर दो, क्या है ये philosophy?
Oh yeah, so phenomenology is phenomena और उस पर जो study और analytics किए जाते हैं. So experience counts as phenomenology. So understanding what experience is subjectively. For example, when I try to see things externally with my eyes and what it makes me feel inside. So for example, why does green grass make me feel better as opposed to concrete jungles where I feel there's too much people? Or why do I feel whenever an animal is being killed, for example, I feel bad, but at the same time, I'd feel good when I see roasted chicken. I'm a vegan. I'm just giving an example. So yeah, this difference in experiences, when in both cases you're seeing a dead animal, but in one case it's triggering a negative emotion in you, an emotion of empathy, sympathy, whatever. While in other cases it's triggering an emotion that I want to eat it. So there's a difference of experience coming from the same phenomenon. That is what we consider as phenomenology.
Okay. Yeah.
Study of experience, basically.
Study of experience.
Yeah.
Beautifully explained. तो अब हमने ये सब मुहूर्त.
Yeah, थोड़ा side track चलेगा. Yeah. But we can talk about Panchanga if you want.
Yeah. Let's go with Panchang.
Okay. So basically in Panchanga there are 5 elements as the name says Panchanga. Yeah. So उसमें से 3 astronomical है और 2 astrological है. So the 3 things, actually 4 astronomical भी कह सकते हो, but one of them is astrological and that is yoga. So the 5 elements are nakshatra, tithi, vara, yoga, karna. These are the 5 elements. So उसमें से जो पहले 3 हैं, nakshatra, tithi, vara, they are astronomical. So let's try to understand what they mean and how it relates to the formation of calendar, which is basically Panchanga. So पहला है nakshatra. So now nakshatra, what happened is when the ancient Indians, they were studying the night sky, they could observe, how planets move and how the patterns in the sky change. So they started observing the moon. So उन्हें पता चला कि okay, आज moon के background में it was this collection of stars. So उन्होंने आज रात observe किया. कल रात जब वो आए, तब उन्होंने notice किया कि okay, moon has moved a bit further from that pattern, and now today's pattern in the background is something different. और कल का पैटर्न थोड़ा ऊपर चला गया बिकॉज मून आगे चला गया शायद. तो उन्होंने फिर एक रात ऑब्जर्व किया. मून केप्ट ऑन मूविंग फॉरवर्ड एंड द बैकग्राउंड स्टार्स दैट कॉन्फ़िगरेशन चेंज बिकॉज मून इज मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट कॉन्फ़िगरेशन. तो ऐसा करते 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 दिस पैटर्न इन द बैकग्राउंड they could find out that the moon comes to the same original pattern after 27 days. So for every night the stars in the background of the moon are different क्योंकि मून उनसे गुजर रहा है. So this 27 houses, these 27 houses of the moon, they are called nakshatras. So nakshatra is basically the stars in the background of the moon for that night. So that is called nakshatra.
And it's only related with moon, है ना? Moon के पीछे जो
stars है
उसी को नक्षत्र कहते हैं. अच्छा.
Perfect, yeah. So when you see the motion of the moon, you will see that after 27 days, the moon comes back to the same configuration of stars. And so we have 27 nakshatras. There are also 28 sometimes. But yeah, this observation of the lunar cycle is what created the concept of nakshatra. Okay, I can classify 27 houses through which the moon passes. So उसमें है पहले है अश्विनी, भरणी, कृतिका, रोहिणी, मृगशीर्ष, आर्द्रा, पुनर्वसु, मघा, अश्लेषा, all of that stuff. 27 basically.
So जो उसके पीछे के stars हैं वो they don't change, मतलब वो जो moon के पीछे
no, yeah.
और वो they
are static. Stars are very far away from us. So the constellations that we see, their structure, that will remain the same as it is for millions of years. The only thing that happens is Earth rotates. So इसलिए ऐसा लगता है कि constellations are moving, but constellations are right there, and the stars are very far away from us. और इन एक दूसरे के बीच में भी बहुत distance है उनमें. But as we are looking from Earth, we think that they are in a planar thing. So for example, अगर मैं ये cell phone ले लूँ और इस पर 2 dots कर दूँ, so they are actually in a plane. But now look at this, ये cell phone और ये light, आपको आपके लिए same ही plane में दिखाई दे रहा है, but actually there is a distance between two. Yeah, so that's the same case with stars. Okay. So हमें देखने के लिए वो वैसे ही still रहते हैं, they are planar, but and the Earth rotates, so we see those moving apparently. But we know that it's the Earth rotates. So yeah, basically that's where the concept of nakshatra comes into picture, and there are 27 nakshatras. So 27 houses through which the moon passes, and when it returns back, then we have one cycle completed, and that is also called nakshatriya chandramas. So if your calendar is entirely focused on the motion of the moon, if it's a lunar calendar, then आपका जो मास होगा, आपका जो month होगा, that will have 27 days. Yeah, so that's one type of mass, nakshatriya chandramas.
तो इसीलिए बस इस पे आते हैं थोड़ा सा. जो ग्रेगोरियन कैलेंडर होता है, एक पंचांग हमारा हिंदू कैलेंडर हो गया, और एक और ज़ोडिक साइंस भी. ये ज़ोडिक साइंस नक्षत्र को ही बोलते हैं?
नहीं, so the zodiac signs would be राशि.
या सॉरी, तो जो लूनर कैलेंडर कह सकते हैं. तो
yes, correct.
तो फिर मतलब why do we go for Gregorian, और ये क्योंकि
right.
Yeah, just go for it. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll explain. So this was basically nakshatra. So another element is needed to create a calendar, and that is tithi. So let's try to see what tithi is now, because our calendar is not just lunar calendar; it is a lunisolar calendar. So it takes into account sun and the moon's motion. So that's where the second concept comes into the picture, and that is called a tithi. So अभी हमें नक्षत्र समझ आया कि 27 houses से moon pass होता है. So how does it relate to the sun? So on the day of Amavasya, the word Amavasya itself means Amavasya, which means to live together. So in the day of Amavasya, the east-west distance between the moon and the sun is 0. So it's not like they are, when we look at them, they are in the same plane. So that's why we don't see the moon on the day of Amavasya. Because the sun and the moon are in the same planar view. So Amavasya, live together. Now what happens is, as we see from the earth, सूर्य को लगते हैं एक revolution complete करने के लिए 365 days पर, और moon को लगते हैं 27 days as we saw earlier. So with respect to the earth, if you divide these two numbers, if you divide 360 by 27, which is related to the moon, because it completes the circle of 360 degrees in 27 days. So that would give us around 13 degrees per day. So इसका मतलब एक दिन में मून 13 डिग्री ट्रैवल करता है. अगर ऐसा हुआ तो 27 दिन में वो 360 डिग्री ट्रैवल कर देगा. That is what this means. So that is 13 degree minus. Now if you consider the sun, so sun completes 365 days in sun completes 360 degree in 365 days. So now we have to divide 360 by 365 for the sun. So that's approximately 1 degree. So now when you subtract 1 degree from 13 degree, what you get is 12 degree. So it means the moon gains 12 degrees over the sun in a day. And the starting point of that is Amavasya. So in the east-west motion, which is called ecliptic, ecliptic matlab sun ka path agar aapne trace kiya, so in astronomy it's called ecliptic. So on the ecliptic longitude, when the moon goes ahead by the sun, in a day it goes 12 degrees up. So this 12 degree gain of the moon over the sun on the ecliptic longitude, that is called Tithi. Yeah, so उसके पीछे गणित भी है. Yeah.
तो फिर तिथि का क्या रोल होता है? मतलब what is the role?
Correct. Yes. So now see how it relates to the calendar. So now at Amavasya, the sun and the moon are at the same location, so that's 0 degrees. अभी अगले दिन moon आगे चला जाएगा 12 degrees. And this is the first day since Amavasya, so it's called Pratipada. On the second day it goes 24 degrees, so now it's called Dvitiya. On the third day it goes 36, Tritiya. ऐसा करते 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 the moon and the sun will now be in opposition. This is what we call Purnima.
Purnima, okay.
Yeah, because the sun's light is directly falling on the moon and the entire face of the moon is visible. Purnamasa. So that's Purnima. And now the distance that has elapsed is 180 degrees since they are in opposition. And if you divide 180 by 12, it gives you 15, which means 15 tithis have elapsed. So इसलिए चतुर्दशी, which is the 14th tithi, उसके बाद आती है पूर्णिमा. And since what is happening is अमावस्या में moon dark है और जैसे ही moon आगे आगे बढ़ता है वो bright होते जाता है. We call this शुक्ल पक्ष.
Okay.
Yeah, so शुक्ल पक्ष means the moon. It's basically the waxing moon, waxing fortnight. And similarly, अभी क्या होगा? अभी moon फिर से आगे बढ़ेगा और फिर से करते 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 15 तिथि के बाद again there will be अमावस्या. So this is called Krishna Paksha. So Shukla Paksha 15 tithis, Krishna Paksha 15 tithis, and we have one masa of 30 tithis.
One mass of 13 tithis.
Yeah, 30.
30, yeah.
Yeah.
15.
So, yeah, 15 or 15. 15 Krishna, 15 Shukla Paksha, 15 Krishna Paksha. So this is what creates one masa. But अब इसमें problem ये है कि after 1 month, almost 29 days के बाद sun भी थोड़ा आगे जाएगा because sun is still moving at 1 degree होगा फिर भी 1 degree तो आगे जाएगा. So this is the reason why our calendar has 29.5 days which are equivalent to 30 tithis. So 30 तिथियों का मतलब 30 दिवस नहीं होता. दिवस and तिथि are different. So तिथि 30 tithis is equal to 29.5 days. Days basically sunrise to sunrise, जो हमें sun के लिए apply है. So it means if 1 month in the Indian calendar stands for 29.5 days, अगर आप इसको 12 से multiply कर दो, then we'll get a year of 354 days. So yeah, so 354 अगर होगा तो we realize that okay, it means our calendar is counting 11 days lesser than the actual revolution period. So it's generating an error of 11 days per year. So अब क्या करें? So अगर ये error वैसे ही रखा तो 3 साल के बाद it will create an error of 33 days, which is an error of entire month. And the whole point of a calendar is it should be in sync with the seasons. अगर आपका calendar एक month से 3 साल में आगे जा रहा है, so eventually it will go ahead by 6 months अगर error correct नहीं किया. So now जिधर summer दिखाना चाहिए उधर आपका calendar winter दिखा है. So there's no use of following that calendar. So इसलिए to correct this, there is also a provision for correction in the Indian Panchanga, and that is the concept of Adhik Masa.
अच्छा हाँ
Yeah. So basically ये जो 11 days का deficit है हर साल, which the Indian calendar generates. So what happens is after 32.5 months, 32.5 months, पूरा का पूरा महीना add किया जाता है. So this added month is called Adhik. इसलिए the word Adhik is there.
Oh, अच्छा. इसलिए the word Adhik
Yeah.
is used. Yeah.
Perfect. So अभी जो हमारा calendar under corrected है, after 32.5 months, जब हम एक mass add कर देंगे, now the calendar will be corrected. So ये जो error था, ये correct हो जाएगा. And this process is called intercalation. और यही हमें Gregorian calendar में भी दिखाई देती है. When we add one day into February after every 4 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes. So the same thing is in Gregorian calendar, the same thing is in Indian calendar, except that we add an entire month, which is Adhik Masa, after every 32.5 months.
Okay.
So that the calendar is in sync with the seasons. But what happens is, ठीक है, हमने calendar correct तो कर दिया, but due to the addition of this Adhik Masa after every 32.5 months, the calendar will be over-corrected after a point of time. So now our calendar is counting more days than what have elapsed. So ये भी गलत है. This is also an error. So ये error निकालने के लिए भी provision था जिसको कहते हैं क्षय मास.
क्षय मास. Subtraction.
Yeah, subtracting. Perfect. और क्षय मास के लिए गणित नहीं है. क्षय मास के लिए it's dependent on संक्रांत and stuff. But अधिक मास के लिए गणित है, which is 32.5 months. So क्षय मास की भी concept थी कि अगर calendar over correct हो रहा है तो उसको correct करने के लिए फिर से एक पूरा का पूरा महीना निकाला जाता है. क्षय मास. So that overall the calendar is correct.
Which actually makes sense है ना, मतलब instead of like every 4 years हम लोग एक दिन ऐड करते हैं फरवरी में, वो बेटर है पंचांग के थ्रू कि वो उसी साल में वो एक मास होता है और एक उसके नेक्स्ट ईयर आफ्टर लाइक हाउ मेनी इयर्स वो क्षय मास होता है.
So क्षय मास के लिए ऐसा periodic गणित नहीं है. It depends on संक्रांति. So that will be done by the astrologer नहीं, that will be done by the Jyotishi. Who keeps a correction of Sankranti. So yeah, that will be done by the astronomer. But Kshay Mas is without concrete mathematics. It depends on, it's a relative reference point. But Adhik Mas के लिए गणित है. Because we see that 11 days का error तो है इसको तो पहले correct करना ही पड़ेगा. Now regarding Gregorian, the reason is Gregorian calendar actually has high accuracy as compared to Indian. So अगर आप time span compare करोगे, so the Gregorian calendar will be good enough until 2300. अच्छा. 2300. इस साल तक Gregorian calendar हमें perfect result देगा. Whereas if you consider the Indian lunisolar calendar, वो थोड़ा finicky हो जाएगा. And the reason for that is precession of equinox. मतलब हमारा calendar निरायन सायन नहीं है. So हमारे जो 4 cardinal positions होते हैं. Maybe I'll explain it. So for example, if this is it's too big. Let's say this is the Earth, or let's say this is the Sun, and this tilted thing is the Earth. Tilt Q because the Earth's axis is tilted. Okay. Yeah. So this motion around the Sun is with a tilted axis. So इसी की वजह से seasons होते हैं. So if you begin from this location, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere are at different distances from the Sun. So the northern hemisphere is tilted away, whereas southern hemisphere is tilted towards the Sun. So इसलिए north में winter होगा, south में summer होगा. अब जैसे Earth अगले position पे बढ़ेगी, both the hemispheres are getting equal light because the tilt is in this direction. It's not in this towards the Sun or away from the Sun. So in this case, it is called equinox. Okay. So equinox दो जगह पर आएगा, इधर एक आएगा और इधर एक आएगा. So these two locations, perfect. Yeah. So these two locations are called equinoxes, and these locations are called solstice. Solstice. Okay. Yeah. So 21st December is the winter solstice. 21st December के बाद पृथ्वी आगे बढ़ेगी, and then we have the vernal equinox, basically the start of spring, which comes on 21st of March. Okay. And then we will have the concept of summer solstice on 21st of June. Okay. And 21st of June के बाद 21st of September को we will have the September equinox या फिर autumnal equinox, the start of autumn. So all these 21st, 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 two of them are solstices, two of them are equinoxes. अब होता क्या है, ये जो tilt है, this tilt is 24.5 degrees, but this tilt itself changes. So the actual tilt of the earth itself is changing. और ये जो cycle है, that is 26,500 years. That is the variation period of this tilt. So that's called, और उसकी वजह से होता ये है कि अभी जो मेरा नॉर्दर्न डायरेक्शन है, जिस स्टार की तरफ पॉइंट कर रहा है, अगर मेरी टिल्ट ही चेंज हो गई, सो माय नॉर्थ स्टार विल बी डिफरेंट, और उसके हिसाब से मेरे इक्विनॉक्सेस की सब पोजीशन बदल जाएंगे. So ये कंसिडरेशन इंडियन एस्ट्रोनॉमी नहीं लेता, like traditional calendar. So it's called Nirayana. Whereas the Gregorian would be Sayan. It takes into consideration the precession of equinoxes. So it's more accurate than Indian calendar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But still people believe in Panchang, na? मतलब बहुत सारे लोग Panchang
Yeah, definitely.
करते हैं.
Yeah, you can follow the Panchang. That is totally fine. Panchang will give you a precise value. You can definitely use Panchanga. As a matter of fact, जो New Year की concept है, in the Gregorian calendar it starts with January, which has no astronomical foundation. It's simply the idea कि पहले Gregorian calendar जो हम कहते हैं, that's actually coming from Roman calendar all the way back. उसमें 10 ही months थे, 12 नहीं. And that calendar began with March, क्योंकि March में spring चालू होता है. Very similar to Indian calendar. Indian calendar भी चैत्र से चालू होता है, which is in March. गुड़ी पाड़वा जिसे हम कहते हैं. चैत्र शुक्ल प्रतिपदा. So that's where a calendar begins. That's the new year, Indians के लिए. So in the Western calendar, like the Roman calendar or the Gregorian calendar, initially उसमें 10 ही महीने थे. Starting from March, ending with December. That's why the December. So if you see the months, March is named after the god Mars, the god of war. Then उसके बाद April is named after Aprilis. Then we have May, which is named after Maius. These are all gods of Rome. Maius. Then we have June is named after Juno. And then we have July, which is named after Julius Caesar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we have August, which is named after Augustus Caesar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and उसके बाद उन्होंने nomenclature बंद कर दिया. So what happens after August is September, which is the 7th month, October, which is the 8th month, November, which is the 9th month, and December, which is the 10th month. So now the calendar makes sense कि अगर December है तो 10वां महीना होना चाहिए, 12वां महीना क्यों December, अगर उसमें डेक ये शब्द आता है. So the reason for that being, ये जो एरर था उनके कैलेंडर का, उन्हें भी नोटिस हुआ कि our calendar is counting less number of days than the actual period. So हमें 2 महीने ऐड करने पड़ेंगे. So after December, once upon a time, they added January and February. So January and February were 11th and 12th months.
Okay.
But then, yeah, and January is dependent on Januarius. That's the god of beginning.
Okay.
So they made sense कि यार January अगर god of beginning है तो ये 11th month में क्या कर रहा है, इसको shift करो. So that is how January and February became the first and the second month.
Oh. Wow.
So when they celebrate the new year, it has no astronomical foundation.
अच्छा. बस उनको
Whereas when we
correct करना था,
yeah,
तो इसलिए उन्होंने ऐसे ऐड कर दिया. Wow, this
yeah,
is very interesting.
yeah. So when we celebrate New Year, गुड़ी पाड़वा के दिन, it actually has an astronomical foundation क्योंकि तब spring season चालू होता है. So basically, the sun comes in the Aries constellation. Aries is basically Mesha Rashi.
Yeah.
So sun comes into Aries, which is the first point of Aries, and that's where the Ashwini Nakshatra is also in the Aries. Mesha Rashi में ही Ashwini Nakshatra भी आता है.
अच्छा.
So yeah, that's when we celebrate the new year, and that's the beginning of our year, spring season. So this is how our calendar is formed. It has 29.5 days, which is dependent on tithis, and tithis as well as nakshatra. So what about the names now? Like हमारे calendar के जो names हैं, months के, चैत्र वैशाख ज्येष्ठ. So where do these names come from?
हमारे भी 12 है कि हमारे कितने months हैं? 12 ही हैं?
12. Yeah, 12.
अच्छा.
Yeah. So ये months अभी इनका नाम कहाँ से आता है? So in India there were two types of calendrical systems, Amavasya Anta and Purnima Anta. So as you can see from the name, Amavasya Anta. So a month which ends with an Amavasya, that calendar will be called Amavasya. Whereas a calendar in which the month ends with a Purnima, that calendar will be called Purnimanta systems. Majority of Indians followed the Amavasyanta system. So it means a masa was measured between two Amavasyas. क्योंकि अगर अमावस्या से एंड हो रहा है तो उसकी शुरुआत एग्जैक्टली 1 मास पहले मतलब अमावस्या से ही होगी, लाइक 1 डे आफ्टर अमावस्या. सो अभी दो अमावस्याओं के बीच में एक ही पूर्णिमा आती है, बिकॉज अमावस्या टू पूर्णिमा 15 तिथिस, पूर्णिमा टू अगेन अमावस्या 15 तिथिस, एक महीना पूर्ण होता है. सो दो अमावस्या के बीच में एक ही पूर्णिमा आती है. सो दैट पूर्णिमा इज स्पेशल फॉर दैट मंथ. So how the month is named is the nakshatra in which the Purnima occurs. Kyunki nakshatra, if you remember, it is the house in which the moon passes. Yeah. So pass karte karte moon ke phases bhi change ho rahe hain. It is becoming brighter. So as it passes, the house in which there is a Purnima, जिस नक्षत्र में आके moon की पूर्णिमा दिखती है, that nakshatra is used to name that month. So yeah, so for example, अगर आप देखोगे चैत्र, पहला मंथ है चैत्र. So इसका मतलब चित्रा नक्षत्र में पूर्णिमा होती है उस मंथ में. That's why it's called चैत्र. Then we have विशाख or वैशाख. So the nakshatra is then we have ज्येष्ठा. Then the nakshatra is ज्येष्ठा, उसमें पूर्णिमा होती है. So चैत्र, वैशाख, ज्येष्ठ, आषाढ़, पूर्वाषाढ़, उत्तराषाढ़. Shravan, we have Shravan Nakshatra, then we have Bhadrapada. So we have Uttara and Purva Bhadrapada. So all the names of these months are based on the nakshatra in which there is a Purnima in that month.
Wow, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
A lot to
And
absorb,
the reason
actually.
exactly, yeah. And so one might ask, well, why should Chaitra be the first month? Why can't Magha be the first month? Why can't Pushya be the first month?
Yeah, because Amavasya se start ho raha hai.
But yeah, so but why should Chaitra be the starting point?
Because of the nakshatra, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Chitra Nakshatra is way later. So the first nakshatra which is in Mesha is Ashwini. So shouldn't our month somehow have the concept of Ashwini? There is no name. So Ashwin महीना है, वो बीच में आता है हमारे कैलेंडर के. Whereas the calendar begins with Chaitra. So why is that? तो इसका आंसर ये है कि हमने जो अभी बात की, the first point of Aries, जहाँ से हमारा ईयर चालू होता है. तो जब सन वहाँ आता है इन मेष राशि, जहाँ पर अश्विनी नक्षत्र भी है, और वहीं पर जब मून आता है, क्योंकि रिमेंबर आवर मंथ बिगिंस विद अमावस्या. सो अभी मेष राशि में सन और मून अमावस्या है. सो दे आर 0 डिग्री. सो इसका मतलब राइट नाउ इट्स द नो मून डे. अभी अगले दिन से हमारा मंथ चालू होता है विच इज द प्रतिपदा, शुक्ल प्रतिपदा. शुक्ल क्योंकि अभी मून स्लोली ब्राइट होता जाएगा. सो प्रतिपदा, शुक्ल प्रतिपदा, दैट्स द फर्स्ट डे. तो ऐसा करते 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 अगर आप अश्विनी नक्षत्र से चालू करोगे तो अश्विनी नक्षत्र के बाद मून ट्रैवल करते करते जिस हाउस में आएगा, व्हेन इट विल क्रिएट अ पूर्णिमा, दैट इज चित्रा. So even though the month begins from Ashwini, Purnima Chitra में आती है because Chitra is in opposition to Ashwini, 180 degrees. Okay. And this is considered as the starting point because it starts from the first point of Aries, जहाँ पे spring season चालू होता है. And beginning of spring season is the beginning of calendar. So that's why Chaitra is the first month. The reason it's called Chaitra is because the Purnima happens in Chitra Nakshatra, which is 180 degrees opposite to Ashwini. Ashwini is in Mesha Rashi, and Mesha Rashi is considered to be the first point of Aries, the beginning of the calendar. So that's why the first month is Chaitra.
इस पे फिर ये जो आपने बताया कि अमावस्या और जो फुल मून का होता है, तो उसमें एक शुक्ल पक्ष होता है और एक कृष्ण पक्ष होता है. तो ये नेम कैसे डिफाइन हुए, शुक्ल पक्ष एंड कृष्ण पक्ष?
Oh, so Shukla Paksha is basically the waxing fortnight. And the Krishna Paksha is the waning fortnight.
Okay. But is it something like कि कृष्ण पक्ष ज़्यादा अच्छा होता है या शुक्ल पक्ष अच्छा होता है?
No. Nothing like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. फिर पंचांग में we studied
Nakshatra, तिथि. And then we have concept of वार, मतलब हमारे सोमवार, शुक्रवार, रविवार, शनिवार. Yeah, वो कहाँ से है? So they are based on the idea. So इसके लिए I'll need a graphic to explain this, but ठीक है, I'll try. So basically the procedure to determine which var comes after what.
Okay.
So वो procedure ये है कि arrange all the grahas in the descending order of their speeds.
Okay.
So for example, Shani is the slowest. So Shani takes 30 years to complete one revolution.
Okay.
So Shani will be at the top. That's why it's called Shani, by the way. Shanaishcharaha, slow mover.
Slow mover. Okay.
Yeah, so it takes 30 years to get back to the same Rashi. So it's a very slow mover in the sky. Slowest object, naked eye.
Okay.
So we have Shani at the top with 30 years. So Shani के बाद कौन सा ग्रह slow है? So we have Jupiter, which takes 12 years to return to the same position. So Shani के बाद गुरु. उसके बाद आता है Mars, which takes 2 years. उसके बाद आता है Venus. And उसके बाद आता है Mercury. Yeah, और Mercury के बाद आता है Moon.
अच्छा.
Yeah, but actually, sorry, Mars के बाद बीच में Sun आएगा, because Sun takes 1 year.
अच्छा.
Yeah, so let me repeat the sequence. You have Shani at the top, then you have Jupiter, then you have Mars, then you have Sun, then you have Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. So we are going from slowest planet, slowest moving object, to the fastest moving object. Moon is the fastest in the sky. Just 27 days to complete. Yeah. So now once you arrange this, now what you do is you start assigning them hours of the day. So first hour belongs to Shani, then Jupiter, Mars, then you have Sun, then you have Venus, Mercury, Moon. So पहले 7 घंटे हो गए दिन के. Now repeat the cycle again. So you'll again have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, ऐसे करके 14 days. 14 hours of the day are complete. And then repeat the process again. You'll come back to 21 hours of the day are complete. So अभी 21 hours के लिए Moon को हमने assign किया है 21st hour in this cycle. So 21st hour के बाद फिर से 22nd hour will go to Saturn. 23rd hour will go to Jupiter. 24th hour, 24th hour will go to Mars. अभी 25th hour हो नहीं सकता दिन का. So that is the first hour of the next day.
Okay.
So Mars के बाद आता है Sun. So Sun day, that will be the first hour of the next day. और हमने चालू किया था शनि से, which is Saturday. So in the sequence, the next day that comes in is named after Sun, because वहाँ से दिन चालू हुआ.
Oh wow, Sunday.
So if you so Saturday, Sunday. So it will if you repeat this cycle, it will give you the entire sequence of days.
Wow. तो ये जो फिर हमारे में दो देवताओं को भी रिलेट कर दिया ना कि Mondays for शिव भगवान, Tuesdays for हनुमान जी, ऐसे करके.
Right.
तो इस
so that is. Yeah, so that is way later. Like that is during the Puranic tradition and stuff. So that is coming from the theistic systems. But the astronomical foundation is so that is coming from Jyotish.
From Jyotish. Okay. तो फिर पंचांग में जो 3 पार्ट हैं वो ज्योतिष पे हैं और 2 पार्ट वो है एस्ट्रोलॉजी पे.
So वार हो गए, तिथि हो गई, नक्षत्र हो गई. Then we have something called Karna, which is basically half of the moon, half of moon's leap. So leap मतलब moon एक नक्षत्र से दूसरे नक्षत्र में जाता है. So it passes through 4 padas, 4 parts when it passes one nakshatra. Because one nakshatras are quite huge. They span 13 degrees of the sky, almost 13.3. So they are pretty huge. So इसलिए moon को 4 phases से गुजरना पड़ता है, 4 parts से. So that is half of that is called yoga. So it's very mathematical. It's not directly related to astronomy. But 3 parts are astronomical. We have Vara, we have Nakshatra, and we have Tithi. Then we have Yoga and Karana.
Yoga and Karana. Yoga?
Yeah. So Yoga is astrological.
Okay.
And what I described earlier is Karana. कि वो parts के 4 phases से गुजरता है padas. So half of that pada is Karana.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, but 3 of them are basically responsible for the calendar. Nakshatra, Tithi, Vara.
Okay. And जो astrological part है उसमें क्या मतलब उसकी importance है like what? कैसा?
Yeah, so yoga is where we get Phala Jyotish from.
Phala Jyotish. अच्छा.
Yeah.
अच्छा हाँ उसमें ज्योतिष astrology 2 part में एक गणित एक फलित ना?
Yeah, so Ganit will be applied in, so ये सब आता है पंचांग में, and this was quite prevalent since the Vedic times. कि 12 महीने होते हैं and महीनों से हमें season पता चलता है. So in the Indian tradition we have 6 seasons as opposed to the 4 seasons in the Western tradition. Spring, autumn, summer, winter, ये 4 ही seasons है West में. Indian tradition में we define 6 seasons. Like Hemanta, Shishir, Varsha, then we have, but yeah, basically 6. I forgot the names, all the 6 names. So yeah, we have 6 seasons, and we have 12 months. So every season has 2 months. Yeah. So इसमें से ये सब वैदिक टाइम के वैदिक पीरियड में भी था दिस कॉन्सेप्ट. अभी वैदिक पीरियड के बाद 4th सेंचुरी के बाद 4th सेंचुरी एडी, आर्यभट्ट के बाद we moved towards Siddhantic astronomy, which is very heavy basis of observational astronomy or mathematics. बहुत develop हुआ. That can be called as the golden age of Indian mathematics and astronomy, classical age. So Siddhanta basically has 3 kinds of chapters. Every Siddhanta. So अगर कुछ नाम लूँ मैं तो for example you might have heard of Surya Siddhanta. So the word Siddhanta has a meaning there. So Siddhantas have 3 kinds of chapters. The first section of Siddhanta is called, I'll try to give you the meaning as well. It is called Madhyadhikara. So mean motion of the planets. So the chapter that talks about the mean motion of the planets, that's Madhyamadhikara. And then we have Spashtadhikara, which talks about the true motion of the planets. And then we have Triprashna Adhyaya, which talks about the questions pertaining to direction, place, and time. So these are the 3 sections in which every Siddhanta is divided.
Which is very deep, which is like very...
Yes. Yeah, it is very heavily based on observational astronomy. How do you calculate the mean motion of the planets? How do you calculate the true motion of the planets from the mean motion of the planets? So to convert from the mean motion to the true motion, there is a correction that is applied called as bija. And the people who used to keep a track of applying this correction, they were called Jyotish.
Oh, okay. तो ये सब करते कैसे थे उस टाइम पे? मतलब तब तो हमारे पास टेलीस्कोप वगैरह कुछ नहीं था. All with naked eyes?
Yeah. This is all naked eyes to keep a track of time. At what time should we perform the rituals? On top of it, they also had instruments. So every Siddhanta also has a subsection called as Yantra Adhyaya.
Oh, okay.
Where all the yantras are mentioned.
Instrument ही हो गया है ना?
Yeah, instruments. They're proper instruments. Not telescopes, but simplistic instruments. Like for example, we have Yashti Yantra, Shanku Yantra. So Shanku Yantra is basically a stick or no more that is kept at the center. उसके आजू बाजू they trace a circle. So the radius of this circle is equal to the length of the nomon.
Okay.
So एक circle बना देते हैं. And then what we do is इसकी जो tip है, it's going to cast a shadow on the circle. So that shadow is what we can use to interpret the time of it, and which is north, east, south, and west direction.
Yeah. The same the Egyptian used with the pyramids.
Correct. Perfect. Yeah. So we have Shanku Yantra, then we have Yashti Yantra, then we have Shalaka Yantra, we have Shakata Yantra. So all these are yantra. For example, Shakata Yantra is like this. So what you do is, Shakata ke liye jo points hai, they are suspended down on a graduated circle. And the distance between this depends on what you see for the moon and what you see for the sun. So ये जो arc form होगा इधर, angle form होगा. So that angle will give you what tithi it is. Yeah, so it's a tithi measuring instrument, Shakata Yantra.
Wow, which is very interesting. They were like really intelligent person.
Yeah. Rather, all of this was basically built on a large scale by Maharaj Savai Jai Singh. So you might have heard of Jai Singh. I forgot the name of those observatories. Very famous observatories in India. Wait, I'll just search and tell you because it's very important to mention this one.
Okay.
Jai Singh Savai Jai Singh observatories. Jantar Mantar. Yes, correct.
Okay. Jantar Mantar.
Yeah.
Bhul Bhulaiya, right? No?
Yeah, it's no. So Jantar Mantar are basically observatories.
Okay.
They are sundials and clocks, huge clocks.
Okay.
That were also used to keep a track of the time of the day. So you can visit Jantar Mantar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were built by Savai Jai Singh.
Okay.
So they are basically huge astronomical measurements, large scale astronomical measurements. So yeah, they are based on astronomy and they come from Siddhantas.
So we have covered Panchang, beautifully explained, Bhargav, like lot to digest, like lot to absorb. But yeah, I mean एक ना बहुत अच्छा context मिल गया कि क्या क्या चीजें होती हैं उसमें. So like we are almost in the end of the podcast, है ना? Like it's a lot to absorb. So we can maybe do it in the second part, but yeah, it's a lot. So एक और चीज आती है कुंडली जो होती है ना. कुंडली इज ऑल्सो बेस्ड 12 हाउसेस होते हैं उसमें, और उसमें जैसा कि आपने बताया कि उसमें यूरेनस और नेपट्यून को नहीं लेते, यूरेनस और प्लूटो को नहीं लेते, सॉरी
या नेपच्यून में, यूरेनस नेपच्यून प्लूटो
या तीनों को नहीं लेते हैं. तो वो क्या है, इफ यू कैन एक्सप्लेन लाइक कुंडली क्या होती है?
या डेफिनेटली. So Kundali is all related to Phala Jyotish. And it's basically based on that initial idea जो मैंने बात की थी कि 1 लाख behaviors को analyze किया और उसके हिसाब से they analyzed the planetary configuration जो उस बच्चे के जन्म के टाइम पे थे. So it's coming from Phala Jyotish, but there is an important concept in there which is Navagraha. And there is a major misconception कि Navagrahas are basically the 9 planets. That is not the case. क्योंकि नवग्रह में सूर्य और चंद्र भी आते हैं, which are not planets. So the 9 planets over there, 9 grahas over there, they are basically the 5 naked eye visible planets. जो हमें naked unaided eye से भी दिखते हैं, like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So these five are grahas as well as planets. The 6th one is Soma, which is basically the moon. Then we have Ravi, which is the sun. And then 8 and 9, they are Rahu and Ketu. Yeah. And Rahu and Ketu are actually not like monsters or something or demons. Rahu and Ketu are lunar ascending and descending node, जहाँ पर eclipses होते हैं. And this is also there in Aryabhatiya, which is the text written by Aryabhata. So to give you a simple idea, if this is the plane of the Earth, plane in which the Earth revolves around the sun. So the moon's plane is slightly tilted. It is at 5 degrees from the sun. So अगर इधर moon होगा, so moon ऐसा घूमेगा Earth के around, टेढ़ा. So what happens is when the moon comes in between the Earth and the sun at this location, there will be an eclipse, which is the solar eclipse. So this point, which is the lunar descending node, because the moon is descending in its path, this one point will be called Rahu. And when the moon is at another location where the Earth is between the moon and the sun, so that will be the lunar ascending node. So that will constitute a lunar eclipse.
And then we call it
Ketu? Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So मतलब वो जो ऐसा बोलते हैं कि राहु का आपके राशियों में आ जाना is like bad और ऐसे वो
So that's all Phala Jyotish. Yeah, that's coming from Phala Jyotish because वहाँ पर eclipses होते हैं. So if that is into your configuration, planetary configuration during the time of birth, they believe that this is an ill omen. But that is basically a part of their pseudo-scientific beliefs. But they also studied astronomy because हमारे पास classical age में बहुत से astronomers थे. Like for example, as I mentioned, Aryabhata, Varahamira, Brahmagupta, Lalla, Bhaskara. As recent as 16th century में, we had the last astronomical text from India. 16th century, which is after the British, or rather the Mughals came in. And that was written in Mumbai by a person named Ganesha Daivat. And he wrote a text called Graha Lagama. And the reason why I'm writing so many texts is you need to apply corrections to the Siddhanta. After every passing era, you need to apply corrections. So Surya Siddhanta original कब लिखा है किसी को पता नहीं, but उसका redacted version, altered version, corrected version जो आया है Varahamira तक. So Varahamira mentions 5 Siddhantas. He has compiled them together. And then those 5 Siddhantas were corrected later by later astronomers. So जो last correction सूर्य सिद्धांत को apply किया गया है, that is in the 16th century, in Graha Lagava. And there were pakshas of Indian astronomy, Saura Paksha, and then we have Brahma Paksha, and then we have Arya Paksha. So Saura Paksha were the astronomers who considered Surya Siddhanta as their fundamental text. Arya Paksha was the group of astronomers who considered Aryabhatiya as their fundamental text. Whereas Brahma Paksha was that group of astronomers who considered Brahmagupta's texts as fundamental. So ये तीन पक्ष थे और उनके बाद में we have texts which belong to that paksha and we have astronomers correcting their original texts. So ऐसे वो tradition pass on हुई है. So it is very interesting.
Yeah. So have you read it or like?
Yeah. Oh. So I have studied Indian astronomy for at least 5 years.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And have you been to Jantar Mantar too?
Yeah, definitely. I was working, not working, I was a science communicator in India's oldest association of amateur astronomers, Jyotir Vidya Parisanstha. So that's the oldest association in India for amateur astronomers. It was established, it is a pre-independence organization. Itni purani hai wo. Wow. Yeah. So it completed more than 75 years in 2019 or 2020. Yeah.
So मतलब तो हम लोग क्या पंचांग को यूज करके कुछ और चेंजेस ला रहे हैं एस्ट्रोलॉजी में या we are still using
so Panchanga is astronomical, not astrology. Yeah. So we definitely have updated the Panchanga, and that is what we today known as the Indian National Calendar. So many Indians who do not know this, but अगर आप INC follow करोगे, which was developed by Meghnad Saha and many other people. So Indian National Calendar के dates आप बैंक के checks पर लिख सकते हो, and the bank has to accept it. Yeah, so you can write चैत्र शुक्ल प्रतिपदा on that. मतलब गुड़ी पाड़वा के दिन आपने चेक साइन किया है and the bank has to accept that date. But many Indians don't know this. We still conform to the Gregorian calendar. 1 January या फिर 21st March लिखते हैं. So I think many Indians should start accepting their calendar and go back to the indigenous roots at least regarding this. And Indian National Calendar combines Indian calendar and the Gregorian calendrical system. So it's as accurate as Gregorian calendar.
तो फिर मतलब अगर आपने चेक साइन किया है 1 मार्च को जो कि तो फिर उसमें मतलब गवर्नमेंट को एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा एज एन कि 1 मार्च
किया हुआ है. So basically if you sign a check on 1 March आपको basically तिथि लिखनी पड़ती है उस पर. अच्छा. So the तिथि as per the Indian National Calendar and the month. So if you say Chaitra Shukla Pratipada, it means first day of Chaitra month.
Which is according to Gregorian is
Chaitra Shukla Pratipada would be around 21st or 22nd of March.
22nd of March, okay.
Yeah, जहाँ पर गुड़ी पाड़वा होता है.
Oh, अच्छा.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. तो मतलब what do you think कि कब से start हो जाएगा वो use?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the Indian government has already announced way back जब Indian National Calendar create हुआ था. तभी announce कर गया कि you can write Indian National Calendar dates on bank checks or even on institutions, educational institutions. But अभी तो शायद इतना जल्दी नहीं होगा because Gregorian calendar is useful for international transactions. जैसे कि मुझे अगर कोई बात कन्वे करनी है for a person living in America, I cannot use Indian National Calendar. They have no idea about it. And most of our corporate world works on Gregorian calendar systems. So it will take time, but I think we should start adopting it.
So thank you, Bhargav. हमने बहुत कुछ बातें की हैं and there is like lot to absorb. So is there anything which I haven't asked you और जो आपको लगता है कि इसमें astronomy के podcast में बताना चाहिए?
I can give you some references that people can read.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
So there is one book which is written by Thanu Padmanabhan, and the name of the book is History of Indian Astronomy, and it is published in Springer. And Thanu Padmanabhan is himself a very famous astrophysicist, and he has written about the history of astronomy in this book. So that's one book. The other book is Indian Calendar, which is written by two people, Robert Sewell and Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit. So this is basically a book which is written during the time of British period, like जब British rule था. Yeah, so it's a very old book. It's a fantastic book. और इसी का मराठी वर्जन भी है, which is written by Balakrishna Dikshit, भारतीय ज्योतिष शास्त्र का इतिहास. But if the audience is not Marathi, they can read the English book that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And they all talks about this Panchang or ये सब हमारे.
Definitely, everything is covered. Yeah. So if you read these two books, Thanu Padmanabhan gives a very detailed account of Indian astronomy, And the second book, Indian Calendar, by Balakrishna Dixit and Robert Sewell. It explains everything about Panchanga, detailed calculations of Kundali kya hoti hai. Yeah, and then it also talks about various eras. जो हम follow, Shaka era, Shalivahan, Kala Chudi, and then we have different eras. 16 types of eras were followed in India.
Which we haven't
So
talked
it
about.
also gives detail. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
बट या
So
हमें
these
बहुत
two
सारी
books
चीजें
I would
पता चल
recommend.
गई है. हाँ, बहुत सारी चीजें पता चली हैं. एक्चुअल में मेरे को नक्षत्र पता ही नहीं था कि क्या होता है, बट यू लाइक एक्सप्लेन सो ब्यूटीफुली. नक्षत्र, तिथि और पंचांग का पूरी चीजें. हाँ, वार वार स्पेशली. बट या आई मीन मेरे को काफी चीजें पता चली. सो थैंक यू सो मच. मतलब मेरे को भी एंड होपफुली ऑडियंस को भी समझ में आए काफी. बट या थैंक यू सो मच भार्गव फॉर कमिंग एंड डूइंग दिस फॉर अस.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. See you in another podcast.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.